Hey everybody, this week on the show, Reina and I sit down and have a conversation about early sobriety and early recovery. She asked me some questions about what to look for in a sponsor, how to know who's the right fit, and we just talk about some things that might be helpful to people in early recovery. It's just us, we sit down and have a conversation. Hope you enjoy it. What's up everybody? I'm Rex.
I'm Reina.
And tonight or today, whatever, it's night now when we're recording.
6:13.
Yep. Reina's just going to ask me some questions about whatever. I don't know. She says that she's going to ask me questions like I was her sponsor. Do you want to tell them why?
Well, there's many reasons why. I had spoken about it briefly. The podcast that we were on with Brett, and about where I'm at in recovery as an adult child. So I had spoken about, I'm pretty early in my recovery, and I haven't asked anyone to be a fellow traveler yet. I'm pretty nervous about that. I know I should just get over it. He's like, get over it. But I'm sure, like everyone working a program, right? And it's the same type of steps. So it's the same basic work.
Same principles.
Yeah, I thought I would ask questions, kind of in that vein, and you could address them however, like as someone who worked the steps, as someone who's been a sponsor to people who've worked the steps. You have a lot of experience on both ends. So, and that one of the more beautiful things, not most, but more beautiful things about the 12 steps is the tradition that goes along with it, with what you learn from different sponsors, or each sponsor does things differently and in special ways, and
you get a multitude of perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've gotten that too. Not only have you been sponsored once, but many times. So you have a big well to draw from.
And I like to get different sponsors. Not that any of the ones that I had were doing anything wrong. I always had like one sponsor that was like my regular go-to guy. But then when I was ready to work the steps after like my second time, I'd be like, hey man, I'm gonna work the steps with such and such this time. And he'd be like, oh yeah, it's a great idea. And the second time I had a service sponsor, which is when you learn about the traditions and the concepts. I worked with two at the same time. I would meet with them both on the same day, an hour apart each week, would alternate who would go first. And he was a total new school, all-inclusive, doesn't matter whether you do drugs or alcohol, but we're still about singleness of purpose. And she was AA's about alcohol, we're all about singleness of purpose. Like, she would have no problem, like, if someone started talking about drugs in a closed meeting, which she only went to closed meetings that you have to identify as an alcoholic. She would be like, she would wait till they were done talking and then pull them aside and be like, there are other programs that are more suited for your needs. Like, she was a really hard line, but it gave me amazing perspective on two totally different schools of thought, and they were really good friends. So it was really cool to do that. So yeah, it's I do have some sponsorship experience to draw upon.
Like, what would you he's already answered this question for me, so I'm gonna ask him again for you guys' benefit. What would you say, how do you determine who you should ask to be your sponsor? Or a fellow traveler?
Right. I guess my first part of the answer would be, it depends on your need. Like, if you're still shaking, needing a drink or a shot of dope, or If you're on like the edge of like going insane because of your past and you feel like you're going to crack, then I would say ask the first person that you see that has a little bit of time, even if it's just to be your temporary sponsor. But if you're not in that situation and you have a little bit of time and you have a couple regular meetings that you go to, I would say look for someone who has what you want. And I don't mean like the car or the nice house or the hot girl or the hot dude or whatever, but the person who doesn't seem to get ruffled, or the
Who has
person
the character traits or the
that
virtues
you're
that
looking for. Like when I first got sober, the first time way back in 2006, my first sponsor, a guy named Raymond, he he was super flighty. Like he was on time when he said he would be somewhere, but he was like the dude. He was like the Big Lebowski. He just all laid back and kind of a ex-hippie, and he was just like, don't worry, man, you know, it's good, you're here, it's all that matters, you know, you're in the rooms, you're doing the work, it's all that matters. And that's what I needed. I needed a cheerleader. I needed somebody who, because I was bad, I was really bad, so like I had absolutely no belief in myself that I could do this. I had no concept of a higher power other than this domineering old man who sat on the throne in the sky and like cast judgment on everything I thought about. Thanks, Catholic Church. But I needed somebody who was like, nah, man, you got this, you're good, you know, like, and he was the guy, you know, that was the character traits that I was looking for. But he also had, this was in 2006, the main thing that I was looking for was somebody who had years. Like I couldn't put together days. So I wanted somebody who wasn't a relapser, wasn't in and out. No offense to anybody who does. I was a relapser. I was in and out. Which is why that's not what I wanted. I wanted somebody who got it the first time. And that was Raymond. Raymond was a crazy alcoholic drug addict who used to have sex with holes in drywall. He'd get so drunk.
Oh boy.
And that was by the time he was 19 years old. 19.
Wow.
He had shakes, went through DTs. Like he was a for real alcoholic. And this was from like 1971 when he was 11 years old to 1979 when he turned 19. And so in 2006, here's this
A whole
totally
life cycle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plus.
So he did all that, and I'll like he's telling me the craziest stories. Craziest stories, like this whole the drywall thing, and I didn't understand why. But we'll get to that later when if we talk about step work. We'll get to the crazy things that he used to tell me that like I thought were completely inappropriate to tell somebody you just met. Like why are you telling me that?
You're
you know
oversharing.
What I mean? Yeah,
Raymond,
absolutely.
Raymond,
I
you're
totally thought he was oversharing. But so he had time. He was chill, my kind of guy. Like he's like a stoner without weed. He had a good-looking girlfriend. He had an awesome business. He drove a cool car. So he had everything I wanted. And so that's how I chose. But then there's people who, like the first guy that asked me to sponsor him, this guy Rourke. I had like 3 months. I just completed the steps, except for my 9th step, but it was ongoing. I was, actively making amends when I could, when they arose, or opportunity presented itself. And he asked me, and I was like, "Hold on, man. Let me call my sponsor." And I called Raymond, and I'm like, "Hey, man, like, how do I know when I'm supposed to sponsor somebody?" And he was like, "Why? Who asked you? Say yes." And I'm like, "But," and he's like, "There's no but." I was like, "What can I tell this dude?" He's like, "How long does he have?" I was like, "I don't know, 2-3 days." He's like, "Yeah, you got 3 months." He thinks you're a miracle. He doesn't understand. He wants what you
You're
have.
a sobriety god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's I was like, he's like, why did he ask you? And I was like, well, I spoke at the meeting tonight. He's like, so you spoke, he heard, he related, and now he's asking. He was like, recovery, unity, service. He was like, he found a union. He's asking you for the service so that he can find recovery. He was like, whatever he asks you, you know the answer. And if you don't, come to me. We'll ask. You can ask me. And if I don't know, we'll go ask my sponsor. And his sponsor was this guy, Jerry. I'm not going to say his last initial because that's kind of not anonymous. But he was like, had been sober since like 1963. Knew Bill Wilson, knew all the old timers, like the original people, you know. And so I was like, okay. And I was like, sure, man, I'll be your sponsor, you know. And he stayed sober when I relapsed. Not that that had anything to do with me. I'm just saying, like, he did great. Good job, Rourke. Good job, Rourke.
Good job, Rourke. Good job, Rourke.
Good job, Rourke.
See, and can I
Yeah,
pipe up just for
absolutely.
1 second? Like,
Don't
don't they say that? They say that in order, well, in AA, I guess this is in AA literature. I'll say that I have read this, that relapse is like one of the key components of true alcoholism.
Right.
That if there isn't an element of relapse, then you aren't really having that hard of a time with it.
Right. Now, it does talk about...
I mean, not to
Those
make
people
anybody
who
feel
never
bad either way. I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah,
saying.
Yeah.
But we try to. We're gonna try to be pretty frank when we speak. You know.
For most, I would say for most alcoholics, most addicts, relapse is absolutely in there because I don't know anybody. That's not true. I know some people from young people's AA who got sober and stayed sober their first time. But, and no offense to them, I am not able to determine whether anybody's an alcoholic, an addict, or anything.
Yeah,
but
and I'm not.
The book does talk about problem drinkers, heavy drinkers, alcoholics. The book, the original literature, the original 12-step literature, makes the distinction between problem drinkers, heavy drinkers, and alcoholics. But it also says that most heavy and problem drinkers, if not curtailed, will become alcoholic. So those heavy problem drinkers that I know who got sober when they were young, because they saw what was coming. You know what I mean? Like, I have a friend, I told you about her. She was like my little sister. Her dad, super bad alcoholic, who fortunately got sober and wasn't just dry. He was actually a very sober, well-together alcoholic who didn't use recovery. He used religion. He got really into his faith, which works, absolutely works.
That was his recovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
But so she definitely had that monster gene. You know what I mean? Her mom had been a real heavy user in the 70s and 80s. Her mom thinks that she probably was addicted to cocaine. So like the potential is there. And at 17 years old, she found herself drinking to blackout every night, doing crazy amounts of cocaine with men who had no business giving a 16, 15, 17-year-old girl cocaine or drinks or attention or anything else, you fucking creeps.
Yeah, no good intentions.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? So it was like her brother, who was a partier, and he's definitely an alcoholic, who was like, hey, maybe you should look at what you're doing. And she was like, wow, like if he's saying that, then maybe I should look at what I'm doing. And she did, and she realized, she tried to stop. And she was tempted so much that she just started hanging out at the detox where me and the guys that I got sober with hung out. That's how I met her. And to my knowledge, she's still clean and sober. You know, I haven't talked to her in a few years, but I mean, everything was amazing. I can't imagine that she'd have been like, oh, I should drink. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I think true, like, the kind of alcoholism, the kind of addiction that puts you in detox, puts you in treatment, there are very few people who are a one shot, one kill recovery. You know what I mean? So I absolutely believe that relapse is a key, not necessarily a key component, but it like
an element for sure.
An element for sure, because it's what drives it home. You know what I mean? Like Bill talks about finding ourselves chilling. We're just chilling in the hotel lobby, and next thing you know, we're 2 drinks in. Like, what the fuck? Pounding on the bar. You know, how did this happen again? Because without healing, so we talked possibly about talking about Beyond 12 Steps tonight. That's going to be a whole episode of its own.
That may be a series of episodes.
Yes, but yeah, it may be a series, because there are some people that I follow on Instagram and social media that I would like to have on here who are not 12-step recovery people, and they are thriving, doing so good.
And that's something that needs to be put out there. Like, every available option,
yes.
Every viable option, people need to know about.
Yeah. But there's all kinds of things out there for people. There's just church. There's synagogue. There's people who just decide that life isn't for them anymore. They stop and they
take up woodworking, or
you know, watch
more TV, or
take the time that they were using for drinking and drugging and devote it to their family. You know, but I think for myself, and for those who are like me, who found that AA or NA or 12-step recovery, I actually really enjoyed HA, Heroin Anonymous, because it's focused on heroin, but it works out of the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book, which is because I got sober the first time in AA, but it wasn't quite what I needed, and I ended up going and relapsing. Cocaine Anonymous is another good program that works out of the AA 12-step Big Book.
Which, if you are in a program and you keep relapsing, you might be in the wrong program. Like, yeah. I know an alcoholic who couldn't get clean until she was in ACA. Couldn't stay clean until she was in ACA. So until she went a level deeper,
absolutely.
It was more about emotional sobriety than actually the drinking or drugging.
Which, for those who are AA history buffs or 12-step history buffs like I am, because I want to know all about what I'm doing. All my friends are like, "Oh, dude, you're joining a cult." I'm like, "Yeah, probably," but they want good things for me, so they don't want any more money.
A happy cult.
Yeah, they don't want money from me except what I'm willing to put in that basket so that we can keep having coffee and coins at the meeting to give out, literature. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's like they said to me, like, "You're being brainwashed," and I'm like, my brain can definitely use a good washing. You know what I mean? After 27 years of pollutants. But so I worked the steps and I read the book. I consumed the book. I at one point could almost 100% by memory recite the first 163 pages. And it says more will be revealed. The longer we do the work, the more we keep coming back, the deeper we go, more will be revealed. But then the only thing it says what's to be done with this more will be revealed is to pray about it. Give it up to God. I'm an action kind of guy. You know what I mean? I'm not the kind of person to sit and wait for things to happen. I go out and I make things happen. You know, I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's one of my total, absolute core beliefs is that faith can move mountains, but you better bring a shovel. You know, God helps those who help themselves.
Well, and why wouldn't you start moving towards what you and faith
Right.
believe is coming?
Right. And I'm trying to have a better life for myself. I'm trying to change the way I think. I'm trying not to put a needle in my arm anymore. I'm trying not to be self-destructive anymore. I'm trying to learn how to feel. So now I'm feeling, right? So I have all this childhood trauma, sexual assault, sexual molestation, physical beatings, total psychological warfare. I'm fat, I'm stupid, I'm ugly, I'm a piece of shit, I'm never going to be nothing but a junkie ex-con like my real father. Yada, yada, yada. It's all coming back, right? Because the fog is lifting. Because you got to remember, like...
So in case you guys are missing it, he's kind of talking about what is happening for him within the process of doing the work of the steps.
Yes.
The evolution of like what emotionally, spiritually was going on for him.
Right. Because like the first time I did the steps, it was real quick. RAINN was all about AA boot camp. Like, let's not fuck around. You weren't fucking around when you were getting high and when you were drinking, so don't fuck around with your sobriety. And so I was like, that makes absolute perfect sense to me.
Yeah, if you were to put as much energy into, yeah.
I had hang-ups. About the whole God thing when I first came in. You know, almost every single person that I've worked with, and maybe it's because I share about this often, but they are always like, oh man, I kind of feel the same way you did about God. Like, I really don't dig the whole God thing, you know? So then I tell them, you know, because I came to this to myself. When I first started doing the steps, Raymond, funny story. Can I tell the story real quick?
Yeah.
I went to my parole officer, I checked myself into detox. He was cool. He could have totally sent me back to prison, because this is back 2006 when hot UAs for opiates and cocaine and stuff was still an absolute returnable, you could do the rest of your time on parole offense. So I go to him and I just laid myself bare. Told him, this is what I'm doing, this is where I've been going, this is why I'm losing so much weight. Because I had been doctoring paperwork with copied and pasted hospital letterhead and stuff. I had my parole officer and my job convinced that I had a tumor somewhere in my esophagus on the diaphragm. I don't even know what that is. Nobody knows what the diaphragm is.
I know what the diaphragm is.
Okay.
Lots of people know what the diaphragm is.
In your stomach?
It's above your stomach.
Okay, so I told him that I had a tumor there, and that it caused me to puke. I couldn't hold food down. That's why I was losing so much weight.
That's actually it seems like a pretty
It absolutely does, especially when you have paperwork.
That's
Yeah, with real oncology, because like I did my research. I looked up the doctors. I was like, okay, and it's terrible. I'm a terrible human being. I was a terrible human being. Not anymore. But so I just laid it all.
It's amazing what the mind will do, right?
The level, right? Yeah. The insanity
what
that
we'll go to
right.
try to maintain this
yes.
fucked up thing we're doing.
Yes.
To make it keep being okay.
Yeah.
It's just more denial.
Justify.
Yeah.
And then like the funny thing is like I almost believed it. Like I'd be fine, and then I'd get these stomach cramps until I got high. And like it's weird, like it wasn't dope sick. It was like I could be well, but not high. And then I'd get these like weird sharp pains in my stomach. Like I was like totally psychosomatic lying to myself, because I was like a method actor. I was immersed in this role of this, because I was seeing my parole officer like twice a week because I was on ankle monitor. Oh, and this whole time that I'm shooting dope and partying with underage people and stuff, I literally lived 9 blocks from the parole office.
There's parts of his story that are so funny, you guys. Like,
so I go to him, I lay my soul bare. He tells me to go home at first. He's like, all right, I'm gonna make some phone calls, da 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 da. So I go home, they show up at my house, boom, search. Man, they find a bunch of stuff. They find needles, alcohol, weed, some dirty wrappers that had heroin residue on them. And he tells me, he's got me sitting in this chair. I'm handcuffed in this little metal folding chair that we had in our living room. And he comes over and he uncuffs me. He's like, it's 6 o'clock right now. I just got off the phone with the ARC in Boulder. You have until 9 p.m. to be there. If you are 1 second late, he holds up this bag of contraband in a biohazard bag. And he's like, this goes to the DA. Like, before they were even out of the driveway, I was walking to the bus stop. It's only a 45-minute bus ride away, but I wasn't chancing it. And so I end up at the detox, and I want to leave. 2 days in, I'm so dope sick, because I was doing about 2.5 grams of heroin a day, about a gram or two of coke a day, and drinking every night. My roommates were drinkers, so of course, every night after work, woohoo, what's up? Let's drink. And whiskey and heroin, that's an awesome combination, let me tell you. It gets you good and sick. And so I wanted to leave, and this guy who was in there he was just hanging out during the day. He was like there for outpatient treatment. He gave me an 800 milligram Seroquel, and I ate it, the whole thing. Which, if you're not used to taking Seroquel, like they start you off at like 25 to 50 milligrams to start. I took 800 milligrams. I do not remember the next 3 days. But apparently they just chalked it up to me being dope sick. Like, because it came up my vitals, like I ate, threw it up, but I ate. I was using the restroom. I wasn't like defecating or peeing on myself, which is surprising, because you normally do that back then. You just couldn't make it. But I come out of the fog about 4 days in, and I got this business card with a smiley face on it. It says, call anytime, Raymond. And I'm like, I'm thinking I met a new drug dealer. So I tear it up, throw it away. I wake up the next morning, because I'm still Seroquel hungover, and there's 2 more of them stuck into the little bulletin board, cork board next to my bed. And I'm like, what the hell? And so this is like 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, I guess he's getting off work, because he was, I come to find out later, he was the nighttime janitor at the mental health complex in Boulder, Colorado. But I didn't know this. And Raymond's very metro. Very highlights in his hair, like Armani. He wore Armani like shirts and like Prada jeans with like $400 floor shine shoes to buff the floors at the mental health building in the ARC. But that's just how he was. He went without for so long that once he finally made it, him and his lady go to New York twice a year to shop. And they go to Milan every 5 years. You know what I mean? But he comes up, and I gotta be honest, I thought he was gay. I thought he was hitting on me. Because he's like, hey buddy, how you doing? And he's like rubbing my arm, and I'm like, what's up? I was like, he's like, Raymond. I was like, oh, Raymond. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, not drug dealer. He likes me, which is cool. It's fine. It's just not my thing, right? And so he's like, hey, I'll see you tonight. And he like squeezes my elbow, and I'm like, oh. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll just tell him, I'm telling him when I see him that I'm straight. I appreciate He comes, so at this point, the Seroquel's wore off, so now I can't sleep. I'm like restless leg syndrome, pacing. But it's a detox. So 24 hours a day, there's a TV room, you know what I mean? There's a smoking area. This is back when you could still smoke in detoxes, and I still smoked. And he came with the big book. And he sat with me for 4 hours on his night off from 2 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the morning, reading the big book to me. And we got all the way to chapter 5. And every time I had a question, he answered it. And every time we came to a question in the book, we answered it. Like, he read the book to me while I read along. And like, I'm thinking to myself, like, this is the most retarded thing ever. Anytime I'd get to some weird thing and he'd be like, haha, some crazy story. Like the first night he's telling me that he tried to have sex with a hole in the drywall that he punched because he was blacked out and his friends thought it was hilarious and got a Polaroid. And like, I'm like, why is this guy telling me this? And it's because when we got to chapter 5, how it works, he was like, you've heard this part before, right? I'm like, yeah, I've been doing a lot of AA meetings. I've heard this part. So we read chapter 5 and then we get to the end. There's an A, B, and a C, and then it goes on. It says, it talks a little bit, and then it comes to the 3rd step prayer. And we got there. And he looked at me and he was like, do you believe that you're an alcoholic addict? And I was like, absolutely. He was like, do you believe that your life is powerless and unmanageable? That your life is unmanageable and you're powerless over drugs and alcohol? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, do you believe that a higher power can return you to sanity? And I said, well, I don't know if I ever was sane. I was like, but I'm willing to believe in the possibility. So he was like, why? And this is what I tell people who struggle with God. I said, if a God is something that you devote your life to and you worship and you're devout and you always return to in the hard times, I said, well, then heroin's been my God since 1986. And I said, if I'm willing to believe in the power of it, that it could give me what I needed, and it's a completely malevolent force, I said, then there has to be a benevolent force that's willing to at least help me along and help me get to where I want to be.
That's at least equal.
Right. So he was like, that's really well put. He's like, are you willing to take the 3rd step prayer with me? And I did. And then he handed me a notebook and a pack of pens, and he said, cool, you leave for rehab day after tomorrow. He said, I expect your 4th step to be done by the time you get back. And I said, hold on, man. I said, this is a 14-day super intense residential treatment program. He's like, I know. He's like, so you're not going to have much time to waste. And I did it. But that was like the sponsorship that I needed. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's how I sponsor now and always have since. Like, I don't fuck around. I tell guys, I give them a book if they don't have one. The first assignment is...
I'm probably driving him nuts then, you guys, because I have been very circumnavigating.
Well, no, but you and I, though, like, I think the reason that we work so well, and you think this too, we've talked about it, is because of how opposite we are, but so similar. So, like, that's how I am. Like, she gives me shit when I talk to my body. Like, I yell at my body, like, oh, you're going to do it. And I force it. Where, like, you talk gently and kindly to your body. Like, you're very gentle. I'm not. I'm very abrasive and very rough. But I mean, I grew up on the streets of New Jersey. You know what I mean? Fighting was something that was just ingrained. Shit talking, fighting. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, we didn't.
So, I mean, we're kind of also circling back to, like, what you need to look for in a sponsor. You need to find something that you resonate to. Yep.
And even though he was totally the dude in life, he was fucking Walter when it came to sponsoring. Like, he didn't fuck around, but his Vietnam was drinking. You know what I mean? Like, shout out to the Big Lebowski. But he didn't mess around. You know what I mean? And that's what I needed. I needed somebody who took his life not real serious, but who took his recovery the most serious. It was the number one thing in his life. And it was for mine for a while. Until I was about 2 or 3 years in, working the steps for about the 3rd or 4th time. And I wasn't able to let it go. God wasn't taking it away. I was giving it up to God, and God was receiving it and being like, cool, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to change it? How are you going to fix it? And I had no fucking idea. So I'm going to my sponsors, the hardcore ones, the easy breezy ones, people in recovery, people out of recovery. I'm seeing therapists, and I wasn't willing to sit with my shadow. I wasn't willing to do the shadow work, and I wasn't willing to go back and look at my trauma and sit with it. And I didn't know how to do any of this.
And feel it.
And feel it. I didn't know how. Mm-hmm. It's not that I didn't want to or I couldn't. I didn't know how. And the people that I was working with didn't know what to tell me. They didn't have any advice for me. So I think ultimately that's what led to my relapse. My string of relapses over a year and a half, which ultimately led to my final overdose. But that's a whole other story.
So what's the answer that you found to that now? What changed?
I decided to stop digging. People talk about hitting bottom. I never found one. I never found a bottom. I found the bottom of a spoon, bottom of bottles, bottom of jail cells.
I found the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, found the bottom of my heart. But I never found the bottom of my addiction. And if you read my book or you listen to my story long enough, you're going to hear some fucked up things. Some terrible things that like any normal person, most normal addicts and alcoholics would have been like, whoa, this is enough. Not me. It wasn't until I was willing, I guess, to let go completely, to let go of this life, that it was finally taken away. But even then, it wasn't taken away because I did the work. I journaled like a madman. I went to...
It still could have been like that ultimate and surrender that you were just like, I fucking give, man.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how else to wave the fucking white flag for you, man. I'm done.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's ultimately, I think, what it was. You know, I had heard all through sobriety, and you hear it in the rooms, you got to surrender to win. I didn't really understand what that meant. Like, even though I'd said that prayer, that third step prayer, 1,000 times with sponsees, in meetings, on my own, just repeating it on days that I really, really, really wanted to get high as a mantra.
There's the slogan of 90 meetings in 90 days and or for ACA, 60 meetings in 90 days.
So that's our show for this week, y'all.
Thank you so much, you guys, for coming back or coming for the first time, visiting us, sharing your time with us.
Hope you enjoyed. Hope you follow. Hit that notification button for when new episodes drop. Check us out on our website, nolovepodcast.com. Leave a comment, leave a suggestion for a topic that you'd like to hear us talk about. If you would like to be a guest on the show, you can contact us through there on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. I will leave all of that in the show notes. So thanks for being here. I'm Rex.
I'm Reina.
Talk to you next time.
Bye.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Hope you enjoyed the show. Just want to say, if you or anyone you know is in need of help, Please feel free to contact us at nolovepodcast.com or follow any of the links in the show notes. There is help. You're not alone. There is hope. If I can do it, anybody can do it. All you have to do is pick up the phone or click that link. Namaste.